So hello, everybody. My name is Natasha Phipps with Phipps Real Estate Group here in Calgary, Alberta. I am a real estate investor and investor-focused realtor. I only do investment real estate these days. And today we are doing another investor spotlight video, and I'm very excited to have Trish Fraser here with us today. And she has a wealth of experience that we're going to talk about that I think is going to be super valuable. So thank you so much for being here, Trish.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's so good to see you. We haven't connected in a little while, so it's just nice to reconnect. But the first thing I kind of want to just talk about is how you got into real estate, a little bit of your kind of backstory and what you were hoping to build with it and what attracted you to it.
Okay, well, we had paid off our house and we were in our mid-50s and we were looking at our retirement and what it would look like. And we realized if we kept investing in markets, we were never, ever going to be able to retire.
Wow.
And so we actually went to our bank, the CIBC, put on this thing, and what's his name? You were just on you had a picture taken with him from Keyspire.
Oh, Scott McGillivray.
Scott McGillivray was speaking.
Yeah.
And it just really spoke to our heart.
Yeah.
So we joined Keyspire.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really good. We got a wealth of knowledge to get us started.
Yes.
And then, but it seemed to be at that time, it was quite Ontario based and they really didn't know much about the Alberta market.
Yeah.
And because it was a long time ago. So
Sure.
then we found REIN and I joined REIN and we bought 3 properties in a year.
Wow.
And we suited them. We suited the first 2 together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we bought the 3rd one and we suited it a little bit later. And man, did we learn a lot.
Yes, of course. You jumped right in.
We totally did. The first tenant I put in was a guy that had been arrested for kidnapping in Prince George. I forgot to Google him when I put him in.
Google lesson.
He had given us an alias.
Wow.
And he had ID and everything. And it wasn't what his name was. And so I got back his credit report and he was young, right? Like he looked young. And I thought, oh, he just doesn't have much of a credit right now, but this should be okay. And we were in a rush. We bought it. We got possession. And 2 days later, we needed somebody in it. So we let them in. That was really dumb. The second dumb thing we did was we bought a house and we kept the tenant from before. We didn't do a second walkthrough of the house. And we didn't re-vet her. And those were things that were a big mistake. Sure. I mean, I know she needed to stay there until the end of her lease. Yeah. But at that point, I really should have done a lot more. Yeah. Neither one of these people turned out to be bad. The kidnapper family, they wanted to break their lease, and we were very happy about that.
Please, yeah.
And we let them out with no penalties.
Yes.
And the other one cost us about $4,000.
Wow.
So
okay. You just went over lots of amazing things there. I want to rewind to the first thing you said, which was you were looking at your retirement and what was missing here. And I think this is, there's so many amazing resources out there now, but this is what so many Canadians in this space, but that's what gets them interested. They all of a sudden they start doing the math and go, this is not going to work. Like, I've spent however many years working my job or doing whatever you're doing, self-employed maybe. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, I got to either take control here. I'm going to be in trouble. Right. So, I mean, good for you to kind of get going with. You jumped in with 2 feet. Did you feel like you had any fear at the time? Or, because I always talk about, obviously you found a network, you found the community, and that really helps remove some of the fear to get going. Was that kind of a big part of it for you?
That was a huge part. I read all of John Campbell's books. I read books on joint venturing. I read all kinds of stuff, and I took every course that everybody offered.
Yeah.
And yeah, I read everything that I could get. And I just want to say
Yeah.
that we started this 7 years ago and we're retiring in June.
Wow. Oh, that gives me like shivers.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That is so amazing.
It is. It is. It's absolutely amazing. It wasn't just our houses. You know,
Yeah.
we found a different way to invest in real estate. You know, we've got a lot of passive real estate.
Yeah.
We just, things that we learned at Keyspire were really fundamental.
Mhm.
And we've just run with it. And yeah,
Exactly.
it's amazing.
That is amazing.
That's all I
And
can
to do
say.
that in only 7 years like you did a lot in 7 years to set yourself up for that. And I also like that you said it's not just about houses, it's not just about owning property, because there's many different ways to invest in real
Yeah.
estate, and you can usually the people who do it really well combine a few different things so that they have a few different eggs in a few different baskets, and some are more passive and some are more active, because you're also not trying to necessarily buy yourself a full-time job, because you're trying to retire. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. Now, and then the next thing you talked about was, which is obviously very relevant still today in the Calgary market, which is secondary suites.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
that's not going anywhere anytime soon. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, why were you attracted to secondary suites, in opposed to other types of properties?
Well, Brett, um, I've gone blank. Brent Turner was talking about for the Calgary market at a Keyspire event here in Calgary. He said, you know, the best way to get money out of things is to do a secondary suite. So
Streams
we
of
thought,
income.
okay. And then a fellow from our church, he was doing secondary suites, and he had 3 houses that he bought with a joint venture partner, and he had suited them.
Yeah.
And so we picked his brain like crazy. And so we hired a realtor, and we bought the first 2 houses. We bought one in November and one in January. So
Oh, wow.
we bought them pretty close to each other. We were blessed that my husband was making a lot of money at the time, and we'd paid off our house.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. You were a great person to lend to. Yeah.
yeah, we did everything that all the books taught us to do when
Yeah.
we were growing up.
Yeah.
And then it was such a shock that it wasn't going to work.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we decided that we would do secondary suites. Now it's different. It's a lot easier in Calgary because they've got those shortcuts.
Yeah.
But we did ours when there were no shortcuts. We had to put in new heating supplies, new furnaces, new everything. And so it was very exciting. It was really neat to learn all of that stuff about the code and everything. And because our friend from church had done a few, you know, he was a great resource. So my husband is he's a piping engineer, and he's very good at CAD. So we drew up the houses, we figured everything
wow.
out, and we hired a contractor. That didn't go so great, that part of it.
Yeah. Well, and that's a huge learning lesson, right?
It is.
Now you started with these projects, you jumped in with both feet. Going right into renovations is a big deal. And there's going to be bumps in the road, no matter how well managed or how, experienced you are as well. But let's talk about that. Like hiring a contractor, what do you wish you would have done differently on those first couple of deals when you were kind of building that team? Because right now it's hard to find people. It can be really appealing to take shortcuts, and that's not what we want to do. So what is there any tips you would give people kind of in that position that you were in?
It's a hard one, because although we've learned lots of lessons, we've had 2 bad contractors.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm the best one to even talk about that. One of the things that I did was I discovered after raising my kids I wanted a job that was just kind of brainless. And I discovered that I really loved retail.
Oh, wow.
And we
Mhm.
didn't need the money,
Yeah,
but I went to work at a hardware store
I remember that. Yeah.
and I learned so much. You know, I started out with blinds and stuff, and then I ended up in millwork and selling trim and doors and all
Right.
of that and learning the codes. And it was really, really exciting. And I wish I knew that all of that stuff first.
Yeah.
It would have made it easier for me to interview
Mhm.
contractors.
Yeah.
Um, I think,
Well, and a good lesson there could be if you don't know, like if you're this is part of why people partner, right? To
yes,
to fill in, what skills you don't have or what's complementary to you, right? Not maybe not for forever, but for the first couple of days, maybe someone who is newer, that might be a good partnership if you're feeling concerned about this, right? Because I feel like that's
absolutely.
what people you hear those stories the most about contractors or you paid them for the whole job and they haven't even started, like things that you shouldn't be doing, but you just don't know. And so
No,
I love that. I remember you working at the hardwood store, and I also remember you winning the renovator of the year award at Rain,
yeah,
and us talking then, and you were telling me how much you loved this job and how much you had learned there. So that's great. I mean, it goes back to doing what you're interested in, right? And
it
what,
really does.
yeah.
It really does. And real estate has just opened this whole new world of excitement for me. It's
Yeah.
something that I just love.
Hmm.
And so um, one of the things, like we didn't have our, our biggest problem with contractors is they would hire people really, really, really cheap, probably off the corner,
Yeah,
and tell us that they were paying them more than they were actually paying them, and they did a lousy job.
that's right. Yeah.
So, but when we built our places, we went in with, when we bought our places, we went in with a strong mindset. The first thing we did was we looked at who do we want to rent to? Who do we want our customer to be?
Yes. Thank you. Love that.
And so we decided for us what we were comfortable with. We didn't want to deal with people who were high maintenance. We didn't want to deal with, you know, crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So we bought more expensive product for sure. And we put in a lot of money into the renovations.
Yeah.
We put fireplaces in all of our basement suites. We had uh, quartz countertops. They were nice places. They were only about 5 years old,
Yeah.
and they were nicely pointed, and they were big, like they're 1,800 square feet on the top two floors.
Yeah.
And so it was really good. It was really good. And you know, we are able to get from our houses right now, we're able to get over $3,200 per house per month,
Wow.
which is really good. And we
Great.
do have a little bit more turnover because we deal with people who are, they're tired of living in crappy places, but they're almost ready to buy their own place.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's been really good. We've really lucked out. And our basement tenants are excellent. And I
Yeah.
learned a lot about that from the first two.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I love what you said about choosing who you want your tenant to be first. Like, that's one of the first questions I ask people. People go, well,
Yeah,
where should I buy and what should I buy and all these things. And it's like the only thing that matters is that really, like, who do you want your tenant to be and what types of things do you want to deal with and what do you not want to deal with, and then we can decide from there where and what, right?
exactly.
So I think that is the smartest way to look at it too. And when you're renovating a property, if you're renovating something for students versus a couple that you're trying to attract, those are going to be two very different things, I think. So
They are. And we
that's
put a
good
lot of
advice.
money into the renovations, and I don't regret it for a second.
Yeah.
Our main thing in putting in our basement suites was right around that time there'd been a fire, and some people were having a party and they got stuck in the basement and they died.
Yes, I remember that.
And that is something I don't think I could live with.
No.
So we took the code, the building code, without any of the exceptions and shortcuts they have now, and we went further
Hmm.
because that's the worst thing that could happen, I think, is for somebody to get hurt in my home.
Exactly.
And so we our places are extremely safe. Our basement suites we market to professional people who are tired of having roommates,
Mhm.
just want to live on their own. We separated the backyard so they have their own backyard space.
Oh, that's nice.
And it's been really good. We've had some absolutely wonderful tenants.
That's great. So speaking of tenants and all this, you self-manage your properties as well, right?
I do,
Yeah.
because there's only 6 of ours.
Yeah. So something you can handle. And property management is obviously something that people talk about a lot when they're getting into this. Should I hire a property manager right away, or should I, do some management and in the beginning on my own, so that you can learn what you don't know, and see how you like your properties run? What do you tell people who are kind of getting into this? Do you recommend or think that that's a good idea if they have the time and ability to do it, to jump in and try it on your own first? Or do you recommend that they kind of do a hybrid model maybe? Or what do you think?
Well, if you're out of town, absolutely
Yes.
hire somebody in
Absolutely.
town.
Yes.
Don't be foolish and think you can do it from there, because you will
No.
end up with a real big mess
I
really
agree.
quickly.
Yeah.
But if you're in town, for us, it was kind of a forced thing. We were thinking that we would probably, once we got 10 properties, we would hire a property manager and all of that.
Yeah.
But then the bottom fell out of the market. My husband, working in engineering, was out of work for a while.
Yes.
So we had to. That was taken out of our hands. And so the first thing I did, even before we bought properties, was I read the Landlord Tenant Act through. I took a course on it.
Yeah.
Through the CRA, Calgary Residential Real Estate Association.
Yep.
And that was before we even bought a property. I just thought that was due diligence. Even if you're hiring a property manager, if you don't know the act yourself,
That's right.
that's kind of foolish.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. And it's so accessible. Like there's no excuse not to know that inside and out, because tenants know it and they know what they can and cannot do, and they will try to
tenants
attempt
think
to
they
blur.
know it.
That's what I mean. They'll say that they don't. Some of them really know it. Some of them
Yes.
know it too
They're
well.
the scary ones.
That's who you don't want. And then some of them pretend to know it. So you need to know what is, actually going on here and what the actual rules are. So yeah, I agree. I tend to tell people to, like, I mean, it comes down to your personality as well, and your time availability and your comfort. Some people will just get a manager to lease the property, do all the screening and the showings, and then kind of maybe take it back over from there as a bit of a way to be involved, but not, have the full experience on their own. But
I actually do that for people.
Yeah.
That's what I do on the side. I help a few people put in the right person.
Yeah.
I only do it for 2 other people, and they're furnished places, so it's a bit of a different duck.
Furnished rentals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But one of the best things about the Alberta market is that we can write our own lease.
Yes.
And so I took, I think, 6 leases, and I sat them out and I picked and chose from each one of them and typed up my own lease.
Yeah.
It took me a few weeks because I was working full time, but I got a lease that I was very comfortable with. And constantly, almost monthly, I'm tweaking my lease because there's things that come up and new things that I learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just it. You're constantly learning. Things are constantly changing, and you're having to be worried about different things one year to the next, right? Any like, I don't know, property management, did you have an interesting story you want to share, or something like
aside from my kidnapper?
Yeah, well, actually, how did that work out? So tell us about that. So you found that out after you had moved this guy in, or much later?
2 days later.
Okay.
All the courses said, run the credit check. So at that time, I ran the credit check.
Yeah.
I we were desperate. Never be desperate. Never,
Thank you. Yes. Never be desperate.
never,
Never be in a rush to put someone in a property. No.
never. And that's a hard lesson, and it's one that I live by now.
Yeah.
You only have to do something wrong once.
Yeah.
I also, I'm a dog lover. I love dogs. And so I allow dogs. And he taught me a lot about how to write a pet lease or a pet agreement.
Pet agreement.
Um,
Yeah.
because he had a bull mastiff that attacked the
Oh,
contractors that were working. He would get out of the yard, and he wasn't licensed. He'd never been to a vet. These are not good things.
no, they're not good things. These are not the people you want to be. And like running the Google, just a quick, like, no, let's do with anyone you're doing business with, I would say these days, like,
Yes.
so often I'm in meetings and people will like say things about me and I'm like, how did you know that? And like, oh, well, like I looked you up, of course. Like I've been, they're screening me before they even meet me, which is totally understandable. We all do that now. But to make sure that, you're doing those less formal checks that are sometimes more revealing than the formal ones often are.
Yeah, well, he told me he wasn't a member of Facebook or Twitter, and I believed him, but that was his alias, wasn't a member.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you really have to do, even though you look up their online page and they look okay, you really have to Google their name
Yes. Yeah.
and where they say they came from.
Mhm.
It just has to be done these days.
Yeah.
It's not a step that I've ever missed again.
I had a similar experience actually. Wasn't a kidnapper, but and I usually do this myself, but at the time I was turning over property, my grandmother was in the hospital and passing away, and I hired someone to help me lease the property because I couldn't be there. I just didn't care. I was like, someone else deal with this, right? And she found me a tenant. He was this retired gentleman. Actually, his application looked really good. And where she made the mistake was he had a girlfriend who she did not run any sort of checks on, and put her in as just like a habited. Is that the right word? And she wasn't actually named on the lease as the leaseholder, but was someone who would be living there. And once you Google her name, and I checked him, like, I did ask her, like, did you Google these guys? She said, yeah, they all look good. Everything is good. So I'm like, okay, throw them in. Right. And within the first month, we were having problems collecting rent. It was a whole thing. Google this person's name, the girlfriend's name, like so many criminal charges, articles about her, like ongoing things. Like I was just sick because we had missed that step too. Like I know better, and I even thought about it, but I didn't clarify. Did you Google her name too? So yeah, you only make that mistake once, because that cost me, several months of my life. I did get them out eventually, but it took me 6 months, and they would pay some rent, and it was like really loosey goosey.
Oh,
for
I
a while.
hate it when they do that. They
Yeah,
just
like
pay a
here's
little
half
bit.
the
It's
rent.
enough to
Like
get.
what?
Yeah.
Okay. And their bank was always locked, and they always had fraudulent activity on everything, and they could never, get their money out of the bank and all this stuff. So anyway,
Kidnapper also
guilty
could.
of that too.
I don't know. There was some kind of tool where he could say, yes, I emailed you the money, and send me a screenshot, but it wasn't real.
Wow.
So there are tricks like that too.
Oh yeah. There's all kinds.
And I mean, you have to be really slow. It's like they say in the business world, you have to be very slow to hire and very quick to fire. And it's, running properties and owning revenue properties. It's a business, and you can't kid yourself. And I'm very soft-hearted,
Yeah.
but you can't get away with. You
No.
can't let anybody get away with things, because it doesn't help them either.
Yeah. No, it certainly doesn't. And a month of vacancy is much cheaper than any of these problems. And like we do a lot of new construction
Mhm.
properties. And so people tend to get concerned about vacancy because we can't show it until you own it because it's being built. Like, it's there under construction pretty well up until closing, and we're not allowed to show it. And people are always, and so I tell people now, like, just plan to cover at least the first month's mortgage payment, maybe up to two, depending on time of year. If it's closing in December, like, you're not going to get someone December 1, likely. If it's closing November 25th, like, that's too quick, right? And if someone's calling you today and wants to move in tomorrow, like, that's probably not the tenant that you
You don't
need.
want them.
There's probably a reason. And so just plan that in your process. Like, if you can't afford to carry this property with a couple mortgage payments, then that's really concerning. So to put that in your numbers, and then you're not feeling that panic and pressure to just take whoever comes along.
Yeah, because that's always a mistake. And I was part of a mastermind as well. Like I said, I dove in. I was part of a mastermind as well. And one of the ladies in there said, if they need you, you don't want them.
That's true. That's a good tip. That's a very good tip.
And I live by that,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah. Like I said, I dove in.
Sorry.
Whoopsie.
Checking Facebook. Just checking Facebook to see if we had any comments or anything. No. Yeah, if you're ever feeling that pressure in any situation, whether it's like, if your red flags are going off, there's a reason, and to absolutely listen to that. So I think that's really good advice. Tell us about this Facebook group you're a part of. I know you're very now engaged in the investor community, and I see you commenting and helping people all the time, and you have so much experience, and you're also just an amazingly, like, giving person, and you're always there to talk about things. So tell us about what you're working on there.
It is my volunteer project and I love it. I retired when COVID hit. I just didn't want to be exposed.
Yeah.
So Mackenzie Wilson started this Facebook page, and I watched, he had a starting video of how to find a good tenant or something like that. And it was neat ideas that I'd never seen before. So I was like, oh, okay. So I started following the page, and then they said that they needed an administrator. And it seemed like a really good page. And it also seemed like a really great way to give back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, this is something I can volunteer at. And so two of us volunteered, and Guidry and myself, and Mackenzie and Chris Noble run the page.
Yeah.
And just recently, we've got a new lady in, Helen, who's brilliant. And because the page has gotten so big, it's almost 4,000 people now.
Yeah.
And we have people from all over Canada that want to learn about Alberta, because Alberta, let's face it, is the best place to own residential properties, because
Absolutely.
the act is very fair for both parties.
I agree.
So we're starting to get a lot of people from all over the place, which is great. And this is a place where people will post questions. It might, it runs the gamut. It could be, has anybody heard about these people,
Mm-hmm.
to, and the page will chip in. I'll say, I haven't,
That's right.
And the other thing that it does is it helps clarify what the act actually is by people who really, really know the act.
Yeah.
And the page has a couple of sponsors, a couple of eviction specialists. I would say that they are probably the most utilized out of all of the page sponsors, just because their wealth of knowledge on the act. And but there's a lot of people who get into trouble, or they don't look at it like a business. And it's landlords supporting other landlords.
Yeah.
And it's
awesome.
a safe environment, and it's a wonderful page. I can't speak highly enough about it.
Well, I find the whole investor community, like, when people are just kind of like dipping their toe in, I'm like, you're going to see this is just like an avalanche. There's so much available now. There are so many resources, and more importantly, people are willing to share. Like, people are really willing to help, just like yourself, and share, and kind of bring all people up together, right? So
Yeah.
that's just a really great example of that. So I'm really happy for you. And yeah, I see your contributions there like every day. So you're very busy in there as the group has grown. So
I don't really like spending that much time on Facebook, but I do tend to spend at least a couple of hours every day because we vet the people who apply.
yes.
We don't allow tenants in. They do sneak in sometimes. And if you are haven't bought a place yet, but you're going to,
Mhm.
we ask some, you know, we want to know that you own your own house and you're not a
Right.
tenant trying to get in,
Yeah.
which is kind of a dicey thing. We're trying to figure out how to ask people this.
Yeah,
So,
that can be hard, but it is important to kind of keep you know, a cohesive group of people who have a common interest. That's really what it's about. Same thing
and
with our
it's
group as
safe.
well. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. You're trying to get like-minded people together, and that's the point of
yeah,
it, right? So
it really is.
yeah.
And it's all of Alberta. It's the Alberta landlord community. So it's all over Alberta.
And there's a buy and sell page, right, that you want to mention too, right?
Yes, there is a new buy and sell page. It's sorry, I've got my Facebook going ding ding ding.
No, that's okay.
um, there is a buy and sell group. It's brand new, pretty new, maybe a couple of months. And we were finding that people wanted to say, well, you know, I want to get out of the landlord business and I'm going to sell
Yeah,
my property and it's here.
sure.
And
Mhm.
it's like, well, that's not really what we want this page to look like.
Yeah.
So we, Mackenzie and Chris started a new page for just Alberta landlord community buy and sell. And so there's, I trigger people like you and other people
Yeah.
to post places in there because I think it could be a great resource once it really gets going, like our
Absolutely.
landlord group, you know.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. Okay, well, everyone make sure you go check that out. Any kind of last, I always like to add this at the end, kind of, you know, a word of advice I like to give brand new investors getting into this space. We covered some things today, but is there anything you'd like to add?
boy, I think I said them.
You
You
said
know,
them, yeah.
know
Build your
who you want to
community,
put in.
know who
Yep.
you want to put in, exactly. Get educated, talk to people. You know, don't be afraid to talk to people and build your network, right?
And jump. You
Yeah,
got to do it. I
yes,
mean, I know one time when I was talking with you, I
that's
said,
good
you know, I
advice.
really love doing the renovating. So I got together with one of the ladies from that group that we were
Yeah.
in,
Mhm.
and we flipped a condo during COVID,
Right.
and it was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes you just have to jump in.
Yeah, you just jump in
And
and you will learn things. There will be mistakes. You will, you know,
oh
like
yeah,
that is going to happen. Like, but you don't learn anything better than by doing.
exactly.
Right. So at some point you just got to jump and go for it. So I think that's excellent advice. It can be easy with also the amazingly, you know, vast wealth of knowledge out there to consume, and then, you know, years go by and you're like, oh well, now I'm 3 years closer to my retirement. So you don't want to do that either, but to be continually learning and jumping at the same time.
The one thing I would say is don't get analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to get there, especially if you're an engineer.
I have so many engineer clients. We
I
talk about
know.
that a lot because it doesn't, like you said, it's very easy to get there. Like if you make everything worst case scenario, then yes, nothing is going to work. And you know, worst case scenario might come up in different things, but unlikely it's going to come up in every single, you know, facet of a
And
property at the same time.
don't listen to your friends who are telling you not to,
Yes.
because this is one of the most giving communities I have ever been in.
Yeah.
The whole real estate investment, everybody just wants to help everybody else.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so filling and so much fun. And it's changed, it sounds so hokey. It's changed my life because
No, it doesn't at
it's
all.
given me things to learn, you know,
Yeah.
always learning, and there's
Mhm.
always so much to learn.
Yes, 100%. Well, and it's nice to give back. It's nice to give value to people and see other people reaching their goals as well. So, and that's why we do these series as well, is to share and to learn from one another, and help encourage people as well. Because I did a live stream about this just last night, talking about friends and family, bringing you down, and I hear that a lot. And so don't put the energy there. Put it on the people who have done this before you and are doing it at the same time as you, and focus on those networks. So that is really, really good advice. So thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for coming. It was so good to see you and catch up. Maybe we'll see you one day in person again.
Maybe,
But,
I hope so.
for now, I really appreciate your time today and sharing all your knowledge with us. And I wish you all the best this year.
Thank you, Natasha.
Yeah,
Bye.
take care.
Have a great day.
Yeah, bye-bye.